You're listening to the Feel Good Astrology podcast with Louisa Tannermunson. To request your personal reading, go to feelgoodastrology.com.
Hey there, welcome to Pluto Through the Houses. My name's Louisa Tannermunson from Feel Good Astrology, and if this is your first visit to my podcast, welcome. I hope you find it really useful in unpacking Pluto in your own chart. If you've listened to me before, then welcome back. It's always lovely to know that I'm connected, even though I don't get to see you. This is all virtual connection. So in this short podcast, I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts on the unique strengths of your Pluto position. So I'll be spending a lot of the time talking about Pluto in the fourth house, and what it's like if you were born with Pluto in the fourth house. And towards the end, I'll be talking about what's happening if Pluto's going through your fourth house. And of course, this is actually quite a big subject because before it goes into your fourth house, it has to cross over the IC, the angle at the bottom of your chart, which is one of the most intense spots to have Pluto going over. Whilst I'm doing this, we're going to be considering the connection that your natal Pluto has to the other planets in your chart. So for instance, if you already can see where Pluto is in your chart, and you can see you've got easy aspects, to maybe the Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, with trines and sextiles, that would be easy. Where Pluto is in very intense connections with planets in your charts through oppositions and squares, then it's quite challenging. And so I'll be commenting on that as we go through. Before we get really going into Pluto in the fourth house, though, let's just recap some of the themes about Pluto as a planet, because it's one that really transforms our experience, and it's one where it's one of the biggest components of our learning, and it's one that people fear a lot. And it's one that's very hard to articulate. It's very, very strong. So Pluto is the god of wealth and power and the underworld. If you think of the underworld and the most powerful people who have all of the wealth, you might wonder whether they're doing it in secret, because when it's under the world, when it's in secret, you can go to any lengths to get your wealth. You can go to any lengths to get your power. But when the light of consciousness is on it, people are much more reluctant to go to those lengths. So, it does show where we will do anything, do what it takes to get the power that we need, and, if you want to know more about sort of Pluto, in mythology, you might also want to check out my Pluto and Aquarius podcast, because there's quite a lengthy description there where I look at, all the other gods and whatnot in Pluto's family and how it all fits together. It's a bit like family trauma. And it's funny that I've mentioned that, because the fourth house is all about the family. But, Pluto shows us where we seek power, and it shows us where we feel weak and vulnerable. It pinpoints how we're trying to safety-proof our life so that we don't fall victim to what we fear is going to happen. So it can also show us where we experience trauma, manipulation, sexual prowess, imbalance and enemies. It also shows how they might show up. From a spiritual point of view, I think Pluto shows us where we've got to yield to an outside or unseen power and kind of let it do its worst. That doesn't sound very optimistic, does it? But personal experience from where Pluto's gone over most of my planets and one of my angles, and also the experiences of my clients, is that when we fight against what Pluto represents, we nearly always come off worse. It really shows us where we're a bit arrogant and where actually we could be a bit more humble and realize that, yes, we can be more powerful, but at what cost? There's always a cost with, controlled power with Pluto. And so we're really coming face to face, with our fears when we're examining Pluto and when he shows up. It's always showing where there's something deep and painful to learn. But, here's the thing, it always teaches us where we become truly free. So it's huge. Anyway, Pluto in the fourth house, then it brings up lots of themes. And actually, before it comes into the fourth house. It's in the third house, which is about community, early life, school, and popularity. And it's very much about us feeling a sense of belonging, like we belong to a story, we belong to a family unit. Then when Pluto is in the fourth house, of our safety, our house, our home, our family, our programming, in many respects our mother, in some respects past lives, if you believe in past lives, it really shows us where we're seeking power at home and within the family, and to be safe at home, like safety at all costs. It's huge. I've worked with lots of people that have got Pluto in their fourth, and to some extent Uranus in their fourth, who have had really quite traumatic childhoods, where like Pluto also represents death and dying. And so for some people that has been expressed, with a parent like leaving, or like leaving this plane early, because it shows that death or that grief, which is one of the greatest fears for Pluto in the fourth. Pluto in the fourth is our safety. And, when we're really small, our safety comes from our family, or it should do, as far as I see. Like all mammals are born into family situations where the mum and dad are there to protect, or definitely the mum. It's a hallmark of mammalian life. And so our safety and having a safe home, a safe house, a safe family is all really important. And also with the mammalian upbringings, that we get programmed by our parents, we get programmed and imprinted on within our environment. And so Pluto in the fourth, it's showing us where our safety is absolutely vitally important, where it's so important it becomes more important than the safety itself. It's like the control of having that safety at home becomes more important than actually being safe, i.e. you could be so intensely sorting things out to make sure you're safe at home that you become a danger to yourself. And I'll give you an example, as we go through this. So yeah, this is something very strong in terms of seeking power. And of course, the closer to the I see the angle at the start of the fourth house, the closer Pluto is to that, the more disruptive this energy is, I would say, because Pluto on an angle creates a life with catalytic changes. Pluto is really hard to ignore. And even though it's hard to ignore, it can be very subtle in how it arrives, because it's almost like there's an unseen thing. It's like unseen, unclean, underworld. It's like a bogeyman or a boogeyman, whatever you want to call them. It's like it could almost feel like a family curse at times. And that curse might just be the mentality of the family. Like, people believe that this family is cursed, and it gets passed down as a verifiable belief, or you might believe that because your ancestors died at the age of 50, that is a pattern. There are all these kinds of patternings and programmings that get passed down, and they could be fatalistic ones that aren't helping you. So, one of the fears, it's worth asking is there something scary at home? Were there scary things that you associate with your parents? Or that they were cruel? I mean, they could be gaslighters, they could be narcissists. Pluto in the fourth can really show up as family members. It also shows the power balance at home. Was there one person that had it more than the others? And how did they demonstrate their power? Did they use it against you? Or was it you that had the power, and were you using your power against them? It's hard. It's a hard one to see. It's a hard one to admit to. And often with these kinds of situations, the power plays out in both ways. So you might have someone that's very dominant, controlling you, and you become ill because when you're ill, all of a sudden people have to look after you. And of course, you've then got them at your beck and call. So it's power plays in different ways. So you might have a manipulator, blamer kind of energy in your home, which is fed back as victim, I need help and protection. And that's how you get your power. So there are all these kinds of power plays. And I think power plays is one of the biggest words or concepts that I would use to describe Pluto in the fourth. So what are we really learning here? The first thing is what we're learning, and this is the hardest thing, I think, is that there really is no safety at home. It just can't be determined. Like, for instance, here's an example. You could lock yourself up in your home, and you could lock up your home as Fort Knox. But what if you lock all the windows, lock all the doors, and get yourself super safe, so safe that nobody even knows you're in your house? But then what happens if you are eating and you choke and there's no one around to rescue you? And because all of your windows are locked and sealed and hidden, who can hear you? Who can save you? So like, the safety you crave could become something that you end up fearing as well. I mean, you know, you end up disempowering yourself with those behaviors. But you may well also find that what you're needing to learn is that where you've been told, oh, it's for your own good, you know, other people pushing their values on you, and you're expected like a child. The fourth house often shows what it's like to be a child. You're forced to suffer it in silence because you're part of a family, and there are family rules and family expectations, and they could lock you up, you know, because they are trying to keep you safe. You know, this is for your own good. So yeah, there's a lot of these themes going on. Who is causing you pain? I would say your family, being with your family, loving your family, and also losing your family. It's like there's a great big family paradox. You love them and also feel pain from them. And it's like, how do you navigate that gap? How do you navigate that? It's huge. Because again, if you think about the mammalian programming and how we are raised, you know, as mammals, we need to learn from our family. And when we feel rejected from our family, or, you know, the love that they give is very conditioned, i.e., oh, you're doing what I said. Oh, I love you very much. Thank you so much for that. But if you're an individual person who's come here to lead a life of individuality, you know, you might hear that everyone else is loved and you're the scapegoat that gets blamed for things when things aren't going right, because families do that. And communities do that too, and countries do that. You know, the independent thinkers are often shoved out. So how do you find your freedom from this kind of setup? Well, you know, the first thing is to learn that true independence is you being free to make your own rules and to determine your own life. So where I was saying there's no safety at home ever, it cannot be determined. Even if you have a beautiful house, you never know. Like I know somebody whose house burnt to the ground, a new house as well. You know, you never know when something is going to come and destroy the security that you've got. So, you know, this is about learning true independence without the home, without the family. It's about learning to be at home in your own company, in your own body, and feeling at home. It is about homeliness, where you make up your own and determine your own rules and ways of doing your life. And you'll also find freedom from a fourth house, because the thing is, you know, most of us have this put on us, and then we go unwittingly, we end up doing a similar pattern to our family. So it's also really important not to be a controlling person at home. You might find from being controlled at home that you end up trying to control how things are so that people don't feel controlled. But again, control is still part of the mechanism. So you can only really find freedom from that, and find freedom for yourself by allowing other people freedom at home, and to do everything in the way that they want. You know, if you try and rule others to keep yourself from feeling safer, you're going to come unstuck. So, you know, where you've got trines and sextiles to your Pluto in the fourth house, the chances are you're able to create quite a strong home. And yes, you'll be very strong and you'll feel supported. You'll be able to protect your family. You're probably a little bit overprotective, and this may well have come from being overly, like having people protect you too much, or actually having not enough protection. So, you know, two opposite things can help you to create a protective environment for your own. You'll probably be a strong and fearsome homeowner and a strong and fearsome family member, you'll stand strong. Now, if you've got your squares and oppositions to Pluto, you might find that it's very difficult. People be pushing themselves on you, or you pushing yourselves on them. And so it's really important to get used to managing boundaries, and how you can use boundaries to, in a respectful way. It really is about not allowing yourself to be impressed upon, and also not allowing yourself to impress upon other people. It goes both ways. And, if you think it's useful to unpack this in a small online study group, with other like-minded people that are exploring their own Pluto, then just get in touch. It's louisatannermunson@gmail.com, because, I arrange these little study groups so we can all talk about it and share. That's how we learn and how we grow. Now, if Pluto is just coming into your fourth house, this is, I think, a bit trickier, because it will be moving over the IC to do with your home. And that's a really important point. It can show that it's time to move home. So I do see people moving home, or things happen at home that cause a split somehow. So for instance, you might have a job that needs you to move away. You might be separating from a partner. You might just realize you're in the wrong house. You might lose your house. There's all sorts of inferences about the stability of your home. And so when Pluto moves near your IC, it often signifies it's time to change your location, or that the feeling within your home is likely to change. And then it starts to move into your fourth house, and then different resonances to do with belonging and families become clearer. So you might find that someone in your household is becoming dominant, or that the level of care you give them becomes more important. So for instance, with ailing parents, or children that might need more, or a partner that is more clingy all of a sudden, it can bring up fears at home. You never know when a neighbour moves in and they're not nice. It could create that kind of dynamic. But it shows a sense, I think there's usually some form of grief or loss that needs to be dealt with. That's not to say somebody is going to pass away, but there's usually an ending. I think Pluto going over our angles signifies an ending of something of some sorts. And the trick is to understand what is ending before it does, to really be in tune with what you need in life, and to recognize where there's falseness, and recognize where you're having to really control things and do a bit of a PR, a really good PR attempt on your life. So for instance, you might just have these really great PR stories about yourself and your life, where you say, oh yes, well, me and my boyfriend, we just love traveling, and we haven't got time to get married or anything like that. So it sounds like a great PR job, but the truth of it is that you keep doing that because you're waiting for him to propose, or, so these things come up, and often, we are at some level being untrue, and trying to make good with the things that don't feel so good. And the trick here is to find a way to let go of that thing that we are so controlled about. So if you're desperate to find that home, all the time you're feeling desperate about it, like it's never going to happen, and you'll always be homeless, or you'll never have that sense of belonging, it's never going to arrive. It's really hard. It's a time to absolutely be in a place of humility, and to appreciate where you are, and to also work through the other aspects that are keeping you in that space. And there'll be lots of things, because I don't think a Pluto event on its own is enough to create that change. That, it's such a slow moving planet, it takes a good 2 years to go properly over a point. Most times, I think, or it might even be every time, Pluto, when it comes into alignment with one of your planets or angles, it moves over it. And then a short while later, within 6 months, it will move back over that point. And then within another 5 months or so, it will move a third time over that point, before moving beyond it. So, with these multifaceted situations to do with control and families and homes and feeling a sense of belonging, there's lots of other components that also come into play with this that help to describe it. So, you may well find that any unhealed trauma from your childhood crops up during this time if Pluto is going through your 4th house, and it can remind you of relationships to control and opposition. So teen stuff can come up. I think your big learning here is you're missing out on a lot of living because you're living in a place of pain and pre-loss. It's like you're trying to protect yourself is you're anticipating loss. And so you're playing out the pre-loss before it happens. And it might not even happen. That's the thing. And so as you control the home and the people that you share your home with, you're systematically creating the problems that you're trying to avoid. It's a time to let go completely from the fears from childhood, and also to let go of your fears of the future. Death and change and loss is just absolutely inevitable. There's not much we can do about it. And everyone is on their own journey with their own timelines. And if we're trying to cheat death or cheat loss or cheat change, we become an obstacle to our progress. So it's time to face one of the scariest challenges, and that is of being homeless, of losing a member of our family, of having control at home, of having control over our security. It's a time to remember that the only home we have is in our body. And we also need to make peace with the fact that even our own body will be decaying as well. If illness is showing up, it's also a time to recognize and appreciate our body rather than to be fearful of it or try to control it. So really, really big stuff going on. Like I said, if I can be of any help unpacking it, then please do give me a shout. It's louisatannermunson@gmail.com. So I wish you really well with this. As with all Pluto transits, it does move on. And, in the next podcast, I'll be looking at Pluto in the 5th. So if you're in between places, please do check out that as well. But anyway, thanks so much for joining me here today. And if I can be of any help in your future, then please just give me a shout. Lots of love. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the Feel Good Astrology podcast with Louisa Tanner-Munson. To request your personal reading, go to feelgoodastrology.com.